So this week we've been thinking about autistic perspectives, advocacy and power dynamics. George, I wonder if you might say a little bit about how the narratives have changed over the last 10 to 15 years.
Well, I think we've seen a huge amount of change in the narratives around autistic people in the last 10 years. So I think prior to that, almost everything was very much based on more medical model ideas about autistic people. Autism research was done very much by non-autistic people, and all the knowledge about autism was really sort of from the outside looking in at autistic people. But now we're starting to see a lot more autistic perspectives being included in those narratives. So autistic people being involved in things like research and also just advocating for themselves more widely. So there are so many autistic people now sort of using social media or giving talks and sharing their experiences. So I think the way autism is understood is now shifting so that people are understanding it more from within the autistic experience and listening a bit more to what autistic people say about what it's like being autistic. And that is really changing the way autistic people are perceived, but I think there's still quite a long way to go. But it can be quite difficult to change those narratives. Jill, do you want to tell us a bit about why it's difficult to change these narratives?
So I think that fundamentally we live in a society that is quite ableist in terms of the things that society values and says are important. And because we're all socialized into that society, those things often become quite ingrained in people's thinking in ways that they're not really aware of. And so I think it can be difficult for people to fully understand and appreciate the impact of things like the language that is being used, to understand the difference between researching about and researching with, and following research agendas that are set by autistic people. I think that we need to sort of understand who is it who gains from the viewpoints that are being privileged. And so I guess research might have some different ways of framing the narrative and thinking about autistic people according to what it is that they're aiming to do. And I think a good example maybe of some of the issues or a way of illustrating that is if you're a clinician and you are doing an assessment and thinking about a diagnostic report and thinking about recommendations, you're very aware that the point of a diagnosis is so that somebody can access the support that they need in the areas where they might find things more challenging, and also giving a demonstration and some ideas around how people can use their strengths. But if you're wanting to enable somebody to access support, then in our current systems, the way that you have to do that is by demonstrating a need. And the way that you have to do that is by almost presenting a deficit model. And so I think that's something that is really difficult. And that is the system at the moment. In order to access support, you have to demonstrate how much the person is struggling, and sometimes you have to frame that narrative within the person is struggling because they are autistic. And so that's quite incompatible sometimes with a strengths-based approach to thinking about autism. So it is quite difficult to change narratives, and it does happen slowly, but it definitely is happening. And the changes over the last 10 to 15 years have been immense. And I am sure that some of the things that we've presented in this expert track in a few years' time will become quite outdated and will be framed or phrased in ways, or will present as facts, things that kind of go on to be challenged.